Welcome everybody, I'm Taylor Sharp. This is the May 3rd FileMaker Pro user group in Dallas, Texas. We're glad to have everybody here at the meeting room, as well as there are probably about, I don't know, 20 of us here, and then we've got a bunch of people online. So welcome everybody, however you're here with us. I'm going to do our announcements first. The Pause on Air registration just opened up this past week. Pause on Air is a unconference, as they call it, so it means it's not officially run by Claris or endorsed by them or anything, so it's all on its own, and it's a little more informal, smaller, but it also tends to be people that are more full-time, heavyweight FileMaker developers, and it's just kind of fun and more casual, a lot more informal. It's done at a retreat camp in northeast Georgia, kind of near North Carolina and Tennessee, and I've enjoyed going there in the past. Heather's gone and a few other people. So anyway, if you have some training budget for next October, I will say though, if you prefer to stay in one of the hotel rooms instead of one of the cabins or camping in a tent, I'm much more of a hotel type guy. You have to register early because the hotel rooms go fast. Most of the videos are out from Engage, so for those of you who haven't seen Engage videos, check those out from Claris. It was an exciting one back in February. Those are now out and about.
Now we're going to move into listening to Jean and Steve talking about some really cool stuff.
And Harmonic is 20 years old this year. We're going to be having a birthday party later on this year, open house, and you all will be invited, so more to come on that later. But Harmonic is a relative youngster compared to FileMaker, which is 39 years old this year. Their 40th will be next year. What does it take to be around for that long, right? It takes growing the platform. And FileMaker and Claris have been through many different generations of how do you grow the platform. But one thing that I for sure have seen is that growing the platform in 2024 looks nothing like it did a decade ago or 2 decades ago. It's a very different world. There is no such thing as bot software. A lot of the ways that people used to onboard into FileMaker are no longer a thing, right? So how do we get those net new customers into the community, right? How do we get them into the community? How do we get them to be Harmonic customers? That's a question I'm asking, right? So FileMaker Claris is releasing the next version of FileMaker this year, FileMaker 2024. For those of us developers, we'll come to know and love it as 21, and we'll confuse all of our customers by saying 21 when they think it's 2024 or vice versa. But you know, there's several exciting new features coming in that, but of course the big thing that everybody's talking about is AI. AI is eating the world right now. FileMaker, this is their kind of first steps into official integration with FileMaker, kind of native integration with AI, doing some interesting things that I'm sure we'll be talking about as we get closer and certainly after they release it. So I'm looking forward to co-marketing that with them. A lot of FileMaker's and Claris' strategy on growing their platform is co-marketing. And they're going to be looking at those of us as partners to help them do that. So we've been working on content marketing for some time now. You know, this is content marketing. Our brain trusts are content marketing, writing papers, and so forth, and then putting those out there in the world to be found, right? So we're big believers in content marketing. We've been working on building our content marketing portfolio, sometimes aggressively, sometimes sleepily. We have a much more exciting series of things that we're going to be doing in the near future along that front. But to help roll that out, we've been working on a new website, and we're about to launch a new drip campaign. That is our approach to net new. And one of the pieces that we've built to help facilitate that is something that we call Sage. And to introduce you to Sage, we're going to have Jean Misero on my team. Jean does work for us, UI UX, and helped get this ready to go. So Jean, tell us about Sage.
Yes, so Sage, it's an acronym for Strategic Advisor and Guidance Engine, and the goal here is to streamline the process of making, selecting or choosing the right software solution for businesses. So when this decision is made hastily, it might cost a lot of resources and waste a lot of time. And because there's a lot of options out there, you might be tempted to go with a custom solution, or like go with an off-the-shelf type of solution, or maybe try out, like out-of-the-box solution. So what Sage does is it asks you a series of questions, and then it helps evaluate those options based on the questions you've answered and the answers you've given to those questions. And what it does is it goes with all those options and evaluates them, and then gives you an AI-powered solution or AI-powered guidance to what type of solution might be best given the answers you've provided. So we thought it might be a good way to introduce it to you guys by suggesting a business problem that might need solving. So does anyone have any type of...
Yeah, let's click the begin, and we can group think this problem.
All right.
So is our business a new thing, or are we a going concern? What do we want to look at?
Going concern.
All right,
Great.
Lynette, never afraid to speak up. We are a going concern. We've been around for years.
All right.
So, which three of these business challenges affect us most? So, employees are wasting their time doing thoughtless or repetitive tasks, almost certainly. I see opportunities to expand my business. I don't have the tools and resources. Ordinary process is taking too long to complete. I don't have visibility into my vital data, or my present software doesn't support the information flow I want. So,
First one and last one.
Yes.
first and last, okay, I like it. What else do we want? Process, data visibility, kind of more dashboard.
Visibility. Data visibility.
Visibility, okay. All right, do you have a unique business? Of course, everybody thinks they have a unique business, but hopefully we're answering honestly here. Nobody else does what my business does. Not really, but I want to run my business uniquely. I have unique ideas. Or, nope, my business is lock, stock, and barrel like everybody else. It's just the corner I'm on that is my winning feature.
Nobody else does what we do because we're unique and special.
No, lots of
There is.
there.
I'm going to go with the middle one.
Middle one's probably better though.
Yeah, I feel like the middle one's generally the right answer.
Maybe
For
it's
most
only our
companies.
ideas that are
Yeah.
unique.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, what's the budget? Always an important question. The first one, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, the first one is the typical answer. I don't really have a budget, but I can't survive like I am right now, right? I have a moderate budget, but I need to be careful. That one's somewhat common. And then, of course, we're always looking for the golden ticket opportunity. I have big plans, and I have the financial resources to make it happen. So what do we think here? What is our hypothetical business?
Ooh, no, number one.
I
I would say number one.
Okay, I think number one's a pretty common pretty common circumstance.
Even if people have a moderate budget, they're not going to admit it.
Yeah, if you're at this stage of evaluation.
Well, they usually have big plans but no budget.
Right. That's it.
Kind of the 1 in 3 combo.
Yeah.
All right. So, what industry is our business a part of?
It's a grocery business.
Groceries.
The grocery business. So, okay, so you're going to have to elaborate on that a little bit more, Alex. What kind of grocery business do we have here?
Specialize in different weird bananas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So specialty products.
Yes.
Specialty products, grocery. Are we kind of farm to market? Okay, so it's exotic foods.
Yes.
Specialty exotic foods grocer.
Yeah.
Yep. Got it. That sounds like a very interesting business. Next question. What is the major problem that we'd like to fix, right? So I think here we're hoping to articulate a primary problem. And, you know, just to kind of focus our responses, is it people finding us? Is it more around us getting the right food at the right time? You know, kind of a supply chain issue? Is it helping people know the right food to buy?
Weather-dependent
recipes to-
inventory projections.
I was going to say managing contracts with suppliers.
Okay.
Okay, that kind of relates.
Yeah.
We can put more than one in.
Yeah, that's a good
Supply chain logistics and managing supplier contracts. No, I think, yeah, projections, that's good. Okay.
All right.
All right, so,
What? I have to enter my information.
Whose email? Are we giving Steve's
oh,
email?
no, this is all John.
It's all John, so we all get this person on this.
That's your, actually, that's your full name.
Oh, yeah.
Get it?
That's an
I'm gonna
interesting
start
name.
calling you the Elon Musk. would-
Hello, John at harmonicdata.com.
We'll see if
Excellent. So let's see what Sage told us. All right, dear John, thank you for sharing some insight into your grocery business's current challenges. I understand that repetitive tasks and information flow inefficiencies are preventing optimal business operation, causing oversight into your vital data. Most crucially, you expressed concern about weather-dependent inventory projections and managing supplier contracts, both paramount features to a grocery business. Let's talk about your external problems. Let's look at the inefficiencies. And it seems that Software Sage is pretty certain that our low-code team could help. So,
Surprise, surprise.
and you know, Claris FileMaker might be a role in that. We could leverage some API integrations from our app tech team, and we could help automate those repetitive tasks, streamline our data flow, and enhance your visibility. Yeah. All right. Pretty cool. So, yeah. So we're giving this a shot. This is going to be part of our drip campaign, trying to get people to click on this and use it. What, Daisy?
What is Sage built off of?
Yeah. Daisy wants to go the technical path. So, Sage is a FileMaker database that we were just using a WebDirect front end. And it's scripting that is making a call to, I believe we're using OpenAI's one of the ChatGPT instances, and then
4.0.
firing off the email. So that's what it is on the back end. And I would say that we're interested in potentially migrating this to Claris Studio, but for now we use the tools we know and can make work efficiently. Yeah. Well, thanks, John. That was great.
All right, who's going to be speaking for us next? Eric?
So the kind of short, simple problem I'm going to throw some ideas at today is the scenario where you need to export your data, but you would like to do custom column names. Because, I don't know, maybe your field and table names are more developer-y sounding and not really understandable or pretty to the end user. So in my sample file that I've built here, I'll just show you what I've got. Super simple, I've got a table of contacts and table of addresses and they're related thusly. So super simple, nothing crazy. And all of this data is sample data, none of it's real. Well, I don't think any of it's real, but anyway, so now what the standard way you might export this data is just with a standard FileMaker export. And all that is, if I look at my script here, is I'm just doing a standard FileMaker export records script step. And what that results in is an export that looks like this. And we've got our column names here. But you can see I've got name first in camel case, and then I've got underscore name full because that was a calculation. And then I've got addy : addy underscore line 1, which is great for a developer, right? It's the name of my table occurrence and that type of thing. But an end user may not want to look at it that way. So there's a few different ways you could go about solving that. One, which we've encountered before, some people doing, is creating a secondary file with field names named the thing that you want them named, and then import from this file into that secondary file, and then export from the secondary file. Don't do that. That's extraordinary. It gets the job done, but it's extraordinarily clunky, not flexible at all. But if that's the only tool you can think of, then it'll technically get the job done. A second option is to go the virtual value list route. In a virtual value list, we're going to populate what we want for the headers. In this case, I've just said first name, last name, full name, address line 1 to city, state, zip. We're going to express what those are, and then I don't want to reteach the whole virtual value list concept, but we'll have a virtual value list table. It's a bunch of unstored calcs, all looking at a global variable that's going to decide what its values should be. And this works, except you've got to have schema to support it. So you have to build this whole virtual value list table. And all of, you need n number of columns, depending on how many columns you want to export. And then, I've got this subscript called enforce VVL record count. So if you're wanting to export 250 records, but there's only 100 records in your virtual value list table, okay, you need to create more virtual value list records. And then you've got this table of virtual value list that has tons of just empty records in it for the off chance that you need it. And it works. So I can do a CSV file, click that, and now it has dumped to my desktop, and I can open that, and hey, there's that file, right? It's just comma separated list, everything's quoted, wonderful. Or I can export it as an Excel document, and I get the same thing. So here's all my data with those new custom column headers that I wanted.
But they're not bold.
Right, they're not bold. Right, there's zero formatting.
I'm not going to know what to do with it.
Yeah, which you joke, Steve, but there are some end users that
I'm not joking.
They're going to get hung up on the right, but the header isn't bold, and I need it to be bold because I don't know what to do if it's not bold.
Difference.
Right. But there's another option which I was unaware of until recently. This is a feature that has been built into FileMaker for a while now. And shout out to Beverly Voth, who wrote an article on this in 2017. This article was really helpful for me in figuring out how to do this, so I want to cite my sources there. So essentially what it is, let's take a look at our scripting here. When you export as when you choose your export options in FileMaker, you can choose XML, and the standard there will be without this XSL style sheet selected. So it'll just dump it in FileMaker's XML format. So it's a bunch of XML tags wrapped around records and columns and that sort of thing. But you have the option to specify an XSL style sheet. And what that is, for those of you who don't know,
What is a style sheet, Eric?
Right. So an XSL style sheet is just an XML document that is essentially instructions on how to pivot and manipulate and take one XML document, parse it, and turn it into some other kind of text document. I'm not going to get into teaching you how to do this. You can find that out online. It took me like 20 minutes of reading, and then it all made sense. So some of these tags and stuff are required just for the thing to work. But essentially what we're doing here is looping through, and we're defining for each. So we've got a for each loop here. We're saying for each row in the FileMaker XML, we want to loop through each of those, and then for each column, we're going to pull out the value that is in that column. I've set some variables in here, DQ for double quotes, because in this case, I'm creating a CSV file, so I need my values coded, separated by commas, so that's what's happening here. That period is just an XPath expression saying the current value at where I am. And then I'm checking to see my position in that FileMaker XML. Am I on the last record, or the last, in this case, the last column? If I'm not on the last column, add a comma. Otherwise, continue on. And then I've got my carriage returns in there. But I've got this, so before it starts looping through all those records, I'm inserting in this case, a hard-coded string of my column names right in the XSLT. So what that allows me to do is here in FileMaker, let's actually debug through this so you can kind of see what's happening. So I'm capturing, I pass in parameter of CSV, so let's see that. And then I'm going to come in here and I've got my 250 records that I want to export. I'm going to go find my the correct XSLT file that I've got stored in a table. So that XML document we were just looking at, I've just got it in a container field here. And I'm exporting that file to a path, setting that to a global variable. And then I'm using that global variable path in my export step here. And now it's just exported those records. So here's this document. Ta-da. So I took that XML and transformed it into this. Now, here's where I think it gets cool, is you don't have to export it just as a CSV file. You could produce an Excel spreadsheet, hence XLS here. So I want to take a look real quick at that XML. Yes, this is the right one. So this is a similar structure to what we were just looking at for the CSV file, with a few notable differences. One, the method here was text for the CSV. Yeah, so jumping back into this. So we're defining the output as XML rather than text because an Excel workbook is just a bunch of XML. And then most of these, pretty much all these other tags are Excel's defined XML schema. that is documented online, so you can find all of that. But we'll notice here I'm coming in and kind of makes sense. We're establishing a worksheet with a name. We're defining a table and a row, and then data for each cell, right, as we move across. And in this case, I'm hard coding those column names. But you could, of course, do that with variables and make that user defined or however you want. And then after I've set my headers, I am looping through those rows in the FileMaker data and pulling out those values and setting them into the cell. So it's the same general pattern, but I'm using Excel's defined XML structure. So let's take a look at that for a second. So that just exported and happened. It went and went to my XSLT table, found the right file, and did that export for me. So let's take a look. It's this one. Now, you'll notice that I did this as an XLS, not an XLX, XLSX. And okay, here I've got my data. The reason for that is if we look, for instance, at an XLSX document, which is the current Excel format, I want to open this with an Excel document. Is actually a package containing multiple XML files. So when FileMaker does, using FileMaker's basic export as XML, you're creating a single file. There's no way to create this whole tree of XML files. But again, online Microsoft has all of the structure for this documented. And I found the document, and part 1 of 4 is a 5,000-page PDF. Granted, that documents their XML for Excel, Word, PowerPoint, all their products. In any case, that documentation is available to you. So
you're saying you could have turned that set of 300 or so records into a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes. Yep. Or a Word document, which
Very
is
exciting PowerPoint presentation.
Now, so yeah, that's all fine and dandy, and then you can open up as an XLS, and Excel will open that just fine, and then you can save it as the newer file type. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I didn't actually demo any of this, but because you're defining the XML of the Excel workbook here, you can add in things like styling, like formulas, spans. You can have multiple worksheets. So you could add in here a cell for a summary field to sum up some range of columns. Any other variety of things. You could lock the first row. Lock the headers in place. So as you scroll through the big long document, that first row stays in place. All of these different features that you have in Excel. Well, I won't say all. Lots of the features you have available to in Excel, you can define here in the XML as you're exporting this. So you could, after putting in some effort here, you could natively in FileMaker, no plugins, no, other than learning how to write XML and XPath, no additional coding experience needed. You can export a pretty robust Excel document. I don't know, I haven't dug in far enough to it yet to see if you can do things like charts and that type of thing. It's definitely, those charts are defined in the newer version of the Excel OpenXML documentation, but you may be limited in what you can do with, XMLing charts in the older version of the Excel documentation. But still, I think that's pretty powerful, and I don't have to use a virtual list anymore. So,
So if we wanted to deliver an XLSX file using this method, essentially we would need to run it through some kind of converter as a final step. Then,
Right.
basically, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you can also save this exact same file as instead of, so I'll just change this. Instead of an XLS, you can save it as XML and then open it with Excel, and Excel will have no problem opening it at all. Because if I look back at my tags, I am defining that this is an Excel sheet, and I'm using all of Microsoft's tags using their spreadsheet ML, their spreadsheet markup language. So Excel knows how to interpret that. The caveat, though, is Excel is, unless you set it, is not the default program to open an XML document on an end user's computer. So if they double click it, it's not going to open up in Excel. But if they double click the XLS, it will open and then say, "Are you sure?" Yeah. So, yeah.
You ever do it the opposite way around, where you make it the way you want it to look in Excel, and then you open up the XML and then have FileMaker? You basically use FileMaker scripting just to insert the array part of it, but everything else you designed in Excel, and just use the XML of it.
So I suppose you possibly could do that. Now, what I discovered in my looking around here is if you actually go into Excel and save a document as an XLS, that's actually just a binary file. So if you tried to open that in a text editor, it's just a bunch of garbage. It's not actually the XML, which is one of the reasons why Microsoft moved in the direction of making an Excel document a package of XML files, because where you can actually get in there and see all the stuff. So you could do that for an XLSX,
Right.
And transverse the file structure inside of that package.
But
I have a question.
Yep.
Can you define a column, a zip code column, to be text so it wouldn't drop the leading zeros
Yes.
for
So
East Coast destinations?
yeah. So and actually, what I've got the example here. So in this case, this is in the Excel document is setting the cell type to a string, and in this example, we're just setting all of the columns to strings. But you could fork that and be more precise if you wanted some things to be strings, some things to be numbers, etc. Yeah. So in this case, set as a string, it's not going to drop those leading zeros. And on the FileMaker side, I've set that zip column to be text instead of a number. So FileMaker is not going to drop those leading zeros.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Heather.
There you are.
Okay, as we are moving on to our next speaker, Evan McHugh, we just want to remind you all that there's some great opportunities for you with FM Pug. You can come here. Let us know you're coming. We will give you food. Many options of food just for you. Sometimes you call, we don't mind, but you can have food and it is delicious. Also, do you have a FileMaker problem? Is there something that's bugging you? How do I get that thing to happen? Or hey, I found a new solution and this solution is great. I just want to share it with you. Let us know. There's going to be ways to respond to us, and we will collate your stuff and then let you do a little question and answer for those mysteries. And I believe we might be doing that today. Is this correct, Paul?
That's what I thought.
Do we have some subjects that we had already discussed?
I don't know.
Yeah. So it's coming. We're going to talk about that, but you too can participate. The best way to participate, come out, join us. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Welcome, and I'm calling this segment Looping in Place. So what do we typically use the loop step for in FileMaker scripts? We use them for what? Looping through records, looping through stacks of IDs maybe, looping through fields that we want to set. So what I want to share are a couple of techniques that have nothing to do with moving through records or moving through stacks. They're just different ways to use the loop to take advantage of the loop. So I'm calling it looping in place. Kind of like jump roping. It's what I think of when I see this image that looks like a whole bunch of loops going on. So it was perfect. Thank you, Lynette. Okay, this is a demo file that we're going to make available to you as well. So I'll show you right now that if you click on the harmonic, it'll take you to the credits layout, and just click on the segment name down here and it'll take you to the demo. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about are dialogues. So I have a very simple dialogue, and its only intention is to collect a date, okay? And you can see if I submit nothing, I submit today, it's going to say, okay, all requirements are met, and that's the date I submitted. But usually we have to validate the data that's been provided when we require it. Sometimes we have other tests that we want to do, and so I've built in some requirements for this. First, we want to specify a date. That's all they have to do. However, if they specify a date that's older than 90 days, then they have to have sufficient privileges in order to submit an old date. So we're going to test for that, which means we've got to test for, is it an old date? If it's a future date, we want to collect a reason, an explanation for that. And our future date explanations can't just be a period or no. We want a real explanation. And the only way we can prove that they put in more than a, blanket little note to get past that is we're going to require a certain number of words, right? They're going to have to write a sentence for us, okay? So how would we normally do that? I'm going to show you the old way. Common dialogue scripting. We're going to show a dialogue, collect some information. We're going to test that information. If it's not complete, we're going to show them a dialogue maybe with another message that says, hey, you didn't give us what we asked for. And then we're going to test that until we have it. And then we're going to say, hey, was that a valid date? If it wasn't, we're going to show them another dialogue with a different message. And then, oh, wait, is it, does it meet our criteria? Okay, here's another dialogue. And so on, and so on, and so on. Now, when you look at the demo file, there's actually no real code in there. This is just an example for you of the way we typically handle these dialogues when we have a lot of different requirements versus this. So we can do all of that same testing and providing custom dialogues with all the right information, saying all the right things for all of our various rules and conditions if we put it in a loop. And the way that we do that is we start our loop with an exit loop if. So how many times have you shown a dialogue when you actually already have the information that you need, right? Maybe the information's already there. It was filled in on a previous page or something, but our flow is we show them the dialogue. All that ends up happening then is they see the dialogue that shows their data. And okay, I already gave you that. So we can prevent that dialogue from even showing up if, in fact, the conditions have already been met. We're going to take advantage of that here by saying, what are the conditions that we're looking for and what information do we have? And then we're going to set what's going to show up in our dialogue. So the show custom dialogue is using just these variables of title and message. And we've defined what the title and the message are going to be based on what information do we have, what don't we have, what criteria are we testing for, what haven't they done that we want. And in this case, the one thing that we can't do dynamically is decide to show a second entry field. We can dynamically show 1, 2, or 3 buttons, but we can't dynamically show an entry field. So I do have 2 versions of the custom dialogue here because in one case we want a second entry field for that explanation, okay? But it's still all within these 16 steps versus 80. So let's see how that works. Well, let's see that it does work. Okay, so first I'm going to put in, let's see, I'm going to put 1892.5. And I'm going to hit submit, and it's going to say invalid date. Okay, so I'll change that to, I don't know, 1-12-25. Oh, I can do that. It didn't require my enter. Oh, because I haven't filled in my stuff here. Okay. Sorry. And you can test it with different things. So let's say what's required for something older than 90 days. We're going to say privilege level 5. An explanation has to be at least 4 words. And my testing privilege level is going to be 3. And I've given you the option to put in a predefined date so that you don't have to keep entering it every time if you're using the same date. Okay? But we're not going to do that here. So, okay. Now, yes.
So it says minimum explanation length.
Yes.
Is that in letters or?
That is in words. That is in words, yes.
But presumably you can do it in paragraphs, if you want.
Okay, so we're going to do, let's see, 1-1, which is more than 30 days old. Sorry, you don't have the privileges, right? Okay, now let's try something way in the future. 11-6-2030. Let's see if it does it this time. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I broke something because I tweaked it about 10 minutes ago.
Heather.
That's what it tweaks.
I will fix that before we post the file for you. But anyway, it'll do all those things, and it's doing it all within that loop. So here's a list of things that you can test to try it out. And of course, you can put in your optional settings. And these are the dependencies. There are some custom functions. Invalid date is a custom function that I added to test the date to keep it easy so that my scripting didn't have to have all that logic in it. Choice, and anything that I provide you that starts with a bullet means that's a shortcut custom function. Choice is merely shorthand for get last message choice, right? So I can, in my dialogues, I just much prefer, if choice equals 2 or whatever, instead of if get last message choice, right? So long. Anyway, and then days old is a custom function I created, again, just to keep my scripting as clean as possible. And the script that is used is dialogue looped. And there's also a, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the scripting, sorry. So dialogue looped is the script that's actually running this. Feel free to dig in and play with that. This is your code for exit loop if. So we're testing for all the conditions, and you're testing for the conditions in a certain order so that by the time we get to the end of the test, if anything was wrong, it knows what it's supposed to do, and it's basically providing a numeric value for the result. If there's a failure, it's saying at which point did it fail. It failed at we had an empty date. It failed at the date's not valid. It failed at the dates in the future and we don't have an explanation, etc. So that our next step, where we set the dialogue settings, can use those values, and I've documented these so you can see, basically if the error result is 0, actually 0 is they met all the requirements. And we're going to show that dialogue that just confirms that they did everything. Normally in your solution, you wouldn't show that dialogue saying we got everything. You just wouldn't show anything at all. But I've included that so you know that it actually did something. And then at each level for the title, these are the different titles it's going to show depending on the error and the different buttons, what button 1 is going to be, what button 2 is going to be, etc. And button 3 only appears under one circumstance. So basically, we're providing all those different options within the one loop script with 12 steps. Okay. I'm sorry, 16 steps. My mistake.
Nice.
Okay, so let's go on to scripting. Scripting is where we use loops. So, but when we're, yes.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
So the loop sitting outside of the exit loop if essentially is just forcing a perpetual series of dialogues until I'm
Till you
permanently out or get it right.
right.
Right? That's,
Yeah,
okay.
until you've exited, till you've canceled, or you have, and there's one option where cancel isn't an option. It just is, okay.
Yeah, I think we saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So yes,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Got it.
yeah, just one perpetual loop.
Cool.
And what that requires you to do is to really think through your options and what are the possibilities. Because you do have to plan. You saw that big calc with all the different options. But I gotta tell you, thinking about it in one place like that is so less scattered than trying to do that with subsequent dialogues.
It's like a built-in test plan.
Kind of like a built-in test plan, exactly, which I broke. But leave it to Heather. Okay, so let's talk about scripting. So specifically about scripting, I want to talk about error trapping. We need to error trap, and we need to error trap more than we do. There are, how many steps are error prone?
A lot.
Any examples?
Almost every one.
Record lock.
Or you got record lock, you got go to related record, you got, go to record
Not found.
X number, you got find results, you got queries that don't work. There are any number of things that we can try that fail. And
Never fails.
you
Never fails.
never get any errors. Okay, so error trapping is a pain to do, but it's so important for us to do. And even if we are error trapping for the more obvious things, and we pull little tricks, right? We have little workarounds to prevent the errors, like checking for are there any related records before we do a GTRR, right? Okay, but what if the record you're on doesn't have a related record, but your GTRR is for the found set? So you're going to not do it because one record doesn't have a related record? That's not, you're going to have to do the GTRR and potentially fail. So you got to put your error trapping in after your GTRR. So we usually are pretty good about putting error trapping in after certain steps. But what if we've got a script that has a whole bunch of steps that are error prone? Okay, let's take a look at one of those. So, close up our dialog examples. Error trapping common. Okay, so we do some benign stuff. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, why don't you do the little scrolly scroll thing?
So you do some benign stuff, but then you perform an error-prone step. So then you do get last error, and if you got an error, then you, and by the way, I have a custom function called bullet error, which is just the shorthand for get last error. And that's what, so you'll see that in my scripts. So you do something in response to the error. You probably do some more follow-up depending on what kind of error it was. Maybe you exit the script. I don't know. Depends on what it was you're dealing with. Then you move on. You do some more benign stuff. And hopefully you're in the right context because you've addressed any problems that might have happened before. And you do another step, and then you check for an error, and then you respond accordingly, and so on and so forth. And you repeat that however many times you need to, always, often doing exactly the same thing in response to the error, okay? And so on and so on and so on. Okay, so that is what we're used to doing, typically. But what if there's another way?
There's another way.
There's another way. Now, I have to say, because Jeremy Banty's in the room, that I am not promoting this as a best practice. This is merely an alternative approach, an alternative technique for error trapping. Personally, I like it for a number of reasons, and so does much of the FileMaker community. It has drawbacks, I'll say that up front, but I'm going to show you anyway. So here we go. It's called the single pass loop. Let's take a look at the same kind of thing in a single pass loop. And remember, we're looping in place, so we are going to use the loop function. All right, so let's zoom in here again. Okay, so it's pretty simple. We start a loop. Oh, and when you do this, the very first thing you do is you add at the end, and it won't let me scroll now because I've zoomed, but at the very end, you put exit loop if true or 1, because you don't want this loop to actually loop. Okay, that's not its purpose. All right, let's zoom in again here. Okay, so we do some important but benign stuff again. We're inside of our loop. And then we set a variable for our error. And we exit the loop if there's an error. We don't bother going on and doing the next thing. We errored, we're out of the loop, right? And so on and so forth. So we basically exit the loop every time we fail whatever our test is, okay? Then at the end, we test for, did we have an error? So at the very end is where we deal with the errors. So if all of the errors that you're going to have in a script are basically the same kind of error, like record missing, and your way of handling that is to exit the script and show an error dialog, then this is great. It's very clean, it's shorter, you don't have all these error tests, but it's not quite as clean as I would like it. I like the idea of handling all my errors down here in one place. That makes it consistent. It also means that I might exit the loop and come down here and then exit script with a specific message because I'm actually running a subscript and I want the script that ran me to know what went wrong and act accordingly, right? So I like that, and I'd love to see Jeremy talk about that technique, because if anyone has ever looked at his code in things like barcode creator or the virtual sorting, anything you've done with the virtual, there are too many layered scripts for my head to not explode.
Mine too.
And yet, if there's a failure down here, it so smoothly rolls up to the right place. And I don't know, Jeremy, if you're using some of this kind of technique or not, but I'd love a session someday on rolling up errors elegantly, which he does well. But this is, I can do this, right? So if I want to know what happened, I don't just want to exit loop if there's an error. I want to document somewhere what that error was specifically. Maybe I want to show a dialog that says you didn't have any invoices to look at versus there weren't any new charges against that account that you want to invoice, right? I might have, depending on where the failure occurred, I might want to show a different kind of message to my user. So this one I call error trapping smarter. Okay, so we'll do some things here. So I'm going to, again, do some benign stuff, do an error-prone step, which is show all records, which maybe isn't error-prone, but I included that so that I can show you what happens when you succeed, okay? Do more stuff, do an error-prone step, and then I exit loop if, and I'm using a custom function called error found, which has a custom function called error and some other stuff in it. We'll look at that in a few moments. Then I do some more stuff. I exit loop if error found, and so on and so on. And then what happens is at the end, I'm looking for a JSON element within an error variable. So when I perform this, run this error found, it's not only going to return a value of 1 if in fact there was an error, it's actually going to instantiate an error variable in JSON form that tells us exactly what happened. Maybe I want to know different things about what happened. Maybe I want to know this much that happened. All I want is what the error was. Maybe I want to know the system settings and the environment information, because I'm going to take that error and record it in a log. right? I did not include error logging in here because that's a whole other topic, but I have some custom functions in here that can be used for those things that will help you in that. And then the demo we're going to do actually has some very similar to that. I'm providing a little bit extra so that we can run some very specific tests to fail or not, so you can see the differences. So I'm going to open one of these up so you can see. Error found as error. Error has 4 parameters. The type, in this case FMP, you could have maybe a plugin kind of error or an external error that you're looking at for the type. The error code, there's my shorthand for get last error. Description of the error. And error message is another custom function. Basically that's translating that code into what it means, record missing or whatever the FileMaker language is. And then additional details that I want to say. So I want to show, we performed a show all records to kick things off, but it failed, right? If that's what happened. Down here, I'm actually returning information about the environment, specifically the request information, because I performed a find. And here, I'm showing a little bit different information and so on. So let's take a look at the results of that. Okay, and these are the custom functions that we're using here. Error message, my shorthand, error found, error details, error environment, and the 2 scripts that you want to look at are Error Trapping Smarter and Error Trapping Smarter Demo. So let's show the result of no errors. So this is the code that we get in our JSON. 0 code, my description, what we're doing, no error, and sorted information. And of course, you're only going to capture this information and keep it if in fact there was an error, right? Unless you wanted to record successes as well. All right, let's return a simple error result. Okay, attempting to go to the next record so we can do more stuff, except this file only has 1 record. So go to next record, failed, okay? Record is missing, etc. Again, that's a fairly short, well, it looks long, but wait till you see the next ones, okay? What this also tells you, though, is the line number, specifically the line number. So maybe that's what you use to decide what message you're going to code. Be careful doing that, though, because that means that if you said, hey, if the error is line 17, then here's my message, but then you go in and you add a line or a comment to your script. So yeah, be real careful about that. But here's the step name, the script, the line, so you can get some very specific information. More detail, all right? So we had a 401 error, and we're getting more and more and more. We got window information, location information. Okay, no records match the request because we did a find for records that don't have an ID. And application version, record count, parameter for the script is in there, window name, etc. And again, line number of the script step, etc. And including environment request details. Again, error 401. So this was actually performing the exact same find, but with different criteria in our error found result settings. So there we got that. No records match the request. Found count info, location, and location. So there are a lot of options to what you can include in your error results so that you can properly fork your scripts or do whatever. But it's all based on the idea that we don't repetitively error trap. We put all those error-prone things together in a loop so that we can just exit at the right point. Now, has anyone ever done something like that or similar to that in their scripting? I've previously done things where I take a section and I'll say something, I'll wrap it in an if, and I'll say, if my step equals 1, I do this stuff. Now, if everything succeeded within that if, then I set my variable to step 2, right? And then my next if says if step equals 2. Then I proceed. And that's how I have managed to not proceed when if the previous step failed. And that worked pretty well. But within a small script that has a lot of error-prone things where your response to an error is the same every time, doing the single-pass loop can be a much cleaner way to deal with it. Also, that means that the way that you're dealing with it, the way how you're writing your dialogues and stuff, is in one location. Or in a bigger script, maybe 2 locations. So making changes to them can be much simpler. In fact, you could even put that dialogue in a loop. So anyway.
And you could have a while loop inside of that calculation, you know?
It's all limited by your imagination, and that's it. Okay, so let's go to here, the credits. These are links to things. Hey, there's a link to Sage. If you want to check it out, it's right in this file too. This will take you back to here. And FileMaker Standards error handling is where most of this came from. If you look for single pass loop in Google, FileMaker and single pass loop, you'll find that every major partner has written an article about it at some point in time, and you'll find more information, but I didn't find a single actual demo file.
Yeah.
I found a lot of references to the value of it, but and they all speak highly of the technique, but in my experience, it's a technique that's right for certain scripts. It's not right for every script, but it can be very useful. I like it. Any comments or questions?
Not specifically about the looping, but I want to voice one pet peeve I have about error trapping. Is sometimes I've seen code and lucky that I don't know who wrote the code, so I can't cast blame. Maybe it was me, I don't know. But where the error trapping checks for, did an error happen?
Right.
And the code assumes that if an error happened, then of course it was a 401, so I'm going to do this. Instead of actually looking at what error code happened. Because for instance, like on the go to next record, and you're assuming,
Yes.
oh, go to next record failed in a loop, so therefore that must mean there's no next record. Well, but what if there was a schema validation error and it failed to go to the next record because it said, no, this field must be a unique value,
Right.
and the options were revert.
Right.
Well, now you're handling the error completely differently.
Right.
And so don't trap for did an error happen, trap for the specific error. Or like, did an error happen in a find versus is my found count greater than 0? Right? Or like a go to related record is a great example of that. Is there may be the last record in that found set may not have related records. It will throw an error that says no related records, but you still got a found set from the other ones.
Well, so back to the beginning of your comment, I would say there's another opportunity to point out the value of documenting your code. And particularly if you work with other developers, if you make changes to code, put in a comment with your name, preferably your name and the date. We put in name or initials, date, why, and sometimes a ticket number if it's applicable. As much information as possible. What Eric is describing is based on truth. We have a common script that we all use that one day I went into one version of it. It's in almost every file. Or a version of it's in almost every file, and in one file, I don't remember which one, I opened it up and suddenly, out of the blue, it has some new code at the beginning, which basically starts with, if get last error, exit script with a value 401. What?
We have a question coming in from the AFAR people.
Yes.
So, Robert, you got your hand up?
Yes.
There you go. We
Hey.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Heather, for what you have mentioned. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I dropped the link in the chat where I also covered that that same topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say hi to Jeremy while he's in the room. Because we've met a while back with someone who really wanted to go in Vegas after the DevCon back then. Anyway, the one thing I would add to the single pass loop is that it may be counterintuitive, but when I implement it, I start the loop with an exit, even before I do anything else, because sometimes if the script is run by something that triggers it, like a find, let's say you have a layout where you do a find and you have a triggered script that attempts to sort the result of that find.
Yes.
Okay. If you are doing anything in that script that fails to recognize that the layout find might have its own last error,
right,
then the sorting script is going to run over that last error, and as your script that does the find in the layout is going through things, even if you have perform find and the very next thing you do is checking last error,
yes,
your trigger script will have wiped away that last error.
Yes, you have to be
your feet.
You have to be very careful to make sure that there is nothing between the step that triggers the error and your test for the error, because anything in between that succeeds wipes out that error. Also, it does seem counterintuitive, but I find myself more and more adding exit loop ifs as my first step in the loop itself for various reasons. Because, again, like you saw in the dialogue script that I had, there's an exit loop if at the beginning, because what if I don't need this, right? What if this group of steps aren't necessary or I'm not in the right place for it? Putting that exit loop if at the beginning will just skip you to the next segment. Maybe this work that's in this loop has already been done, and that's another way, rather than an if this, then do all these things. If there's reason to do a lot of error capture within that if group, maybe another option is put it in a loop instead, so that you get the benefit of the error handling and you can skip it if you don't need it. Excellent. Thank you for your comments.
All right, it's that time. We want to thank you all for coming to FM Pug this week. We've tried some new technology with a little mini bar that's got a camera going on, and that's going to be right here. Everybody wave to the people afar. Here we go. That's it. And just remember, if you come here, there'll be food. Today we're having burgers and chicken for some people, and nobody went with veggie burgers. I don't know why.
Okay, well, thank you for everybody coming and joining us today. It's been a good, fun, interesting meeting and learning about various things from AI to error trapping. So hopefully some of that can help you with what you guys are doing. We're also looking for future presenters for later in the year. So we certainly could use some good ideas. If you happen to have them, feel free to let myself, Fred, or Greg know. We would, if you would like to give a presentation. And if you're interested in Pause on Air and want a hotel room, sign up soon. Anyway, we'll see all of you next month. Take care.